Hello and welcome everyone to another Ideal Traits Wednesday webinar where we will be going over today to stop essentially ghosting your candidates, right? Leave that for Halloween time. And I actually have two special guests here as well, Kelly and Trevor. If you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourself to the chat, I'm sure that they would appreciate it.
Hey, yeah, so I'm Kelly Wilmott. I'm the Client Relationship Manager over here at Ideal Traits. You may have heard from me, bugging you to renew your subscriptions every now and again. So that's probably where you'll see me, but yeah, that's me.
Awesome. And
Hi, I'm
Trevor?
Trevor, and I'm on the client success team. I do a lot of the job ad building. I'm the one who's going to criticize your job ads, make sure they're all shipshape, so we can get hiring.
Yes, excellent. And he also works in the retention team as well. So you might have heard from him too with those connections. But yes, I did want to bring these two on today with really going over, like we talked about, ghosting candidates, what exactly that means, setting up that expectation of what you should have for that candidate engagement time. So yeah, we'll be going over that today. And I do want to let you guys know that we actually have a chat feature that you can utilize. So if you do have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to chat over. We'd be more than happy to get them answered. And a recording of this will be sent to you after as well. So even if you have to dip out a little bit early, no worries. We'll get that sent over to you. But with that being said, I would love to get started. And I really want to get started by just going over what we mean by ghosting, like, right, like what are we talking about? Are we talking about, from the candidate's perspective, from the employer's perspective? So really diving in on that. So Kelly, tell me a little bit about what you think of when we first came up with this topic idea.
So I think it really comes down to ghosting can happen both ways. It can happen employer to candidate and candidate to employer. Either way that it happens, it is frustrating. It's frustrating, it's time consuming, it costs money. So in my definition of it would be, just not showing up,
Right.
just kind of vanishing, disappearing into thin air. And not on the employer's side of things, it would be so like not actually reaching out to the candidate and letting them know, kind of leaving them hanging as to where
Right.
they are in the hiring process. On the candidate side of things, it's slightly different, I guess. Just kind of, well, actually, no, it's not different. It's just not letting the agent know that, they are not interested in the opportunity anymore and leaving them hanging.
Right. And from the employer's perspective, I'm sure that that's probably what most amount of people here have faced compared to the candidate's perspective, right? But one thing that we did want to bring to note today is what candidates experience, right, when they get ghosted from their perspective. So we wanted to go over because for example, Trevor, have you ever seen like someone's account, right, that they might have not been interested in a candidate and they just didn't reach out to them further?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's pretty common. Someone's not qualified. They don't have a
Yeah.
license, whatever. Um, it's common to just move on, pass on, but it's really important to send them that rejection email. Just letting them know briefly why. Something like, hey, you're just not qualified, or hey, the
Right.
position's already been filled. Um, and the reason we're going to do that is it's going to help kind of build a subtle rapport with that candidate,
Mhm.
because who knows, maybe this person will see that they're not qualified, and maybe they really did want this job and they'll go get that license, or for whatever reason they might turn around and become a customer of yours 6 months later, because you left that lasting impression of, hey, sorry, like, you reached out, you had some communication with them. And if you don't start a relationship, then that's where a lot of issues can start.
Definitely. And I think the biggest thing to note, right, is that when candidates first apply to your job ad, right, they're able to see what it is that you're offering, hopefully not having any questions as to the opportunity. I mean, throughout the series, we'll actually be going into creating better job ads, things like that. But for today, right, they see your job ad and then they apply. Now, between the time that they apply and by the time that you might reach out to them next after they take the assessment or if they don't take the assessment, right, that's essentially where all of this can begin. And so, really understanding that if you do get their resume, if you do get their assessment results back, and they're immediately someone that you're not considering, again, Trevor kind of highlighted on that. It could be because of
Yeah.
experience, it could be because of their lack of license, right? Maybe they just had, maybe they're employed somewhere else and it might be a competition issue. I'm not sure, right? But at the end of the day, you saw something that said, I can't consider this person any further. Trevor actually mentioned about sending them an email. Yes, through your Ideal Traits account, we actually have email templates already created that you can easily utilize to help make that candidate engagement that much easier. But Kelly, out of curiosity, like, what are a couple of other methods? Like, hey, like, I do not want to send an email. I don't like want to go about that way. Like, what are a couple other examples of how someone could reach out at that first initial stage?
For sure. So communication is such a big thing. It
Mhm.
goes both ways. But other than the emailing side of things, I mean, we all know that the market is really crazy right now. It's super competitive, and especially so in the insurance industry.
Yeah.
So picking up the phone is one of the biggest ways of doing that. Now, I know that takes time to do that, and you have to dedicate a little bit of time out of your day to just get through those candidates that apply. But even if it's just a quick, hey, I've got your resume, you're not quite right for the position right now, but maybe if you did A, B, and C, then I could consider you in the future, or pivot and say, actually, you might be quite good for this particular position
Right.
if that's the way it went. So getting on a call, but also they may have already gotten another position elsewhere. So it kind of saves you time as well, because from the get-go, if they've answered that call, you're like, hey, I did apply, yes, but I already have a position or an offer I've taken for somewhere else. You're like, okay, cool. I can archive that candidate now and not have to worry about them. Now, on that point of reaching out to them, yes, it does take time, but we do have like the candidate engagement program now, which is a fantastic additional extra that you could add to basically a service that we offer
Yeah.
for a team of ours to be able to reach out to those candidates and do all that legwork for you. So you can do that too, but you've also got like the ACE bot. You've got different methods of being able to connect with the candidate to get them engaged in the
Right.
process, so that they know,
Exactly.
hey, I've received your resume. Thank you for applying to my agency. Like, we can't wait to talk to you about this opportunity. You're
Right.
excited, you're adding
Exactly.
people to your
Yeah.
team.
Right. And they should be able to feel that as well, right?
For
Whether
sure.
it's from that communication in the email, you can send them a text message, right? Hop on a Zoom call with them even, right?
Yep.
Again, whether or not like you're choosing to move them throughout that hiring process, keeping them in the loop is going to be the most important part, because of the fact
For
that,
sure.
again, having no questions of, oh wait, so am I supposed to be starting today? Or, like, I haven't heard from anyone in a week, like, what's going on? These are different things that can just kind of like be additional roadblocks, right?
Mhm.
So understanding that and saying, hey, like, yes, I was able to review your application. I would like to get one other person involved, but would you be open for doing a phone screen just to
Yeah.
really go over what the responsibilities are, the requirements, things like that, right? You do have the different hiring stages that you can utilize as well inside of your Ideal Traits account, which is nice for keeping them organized throughout that process. So being able to use that as well. But Kelly, you had mentioned about moving them to the archive folder. Now, Trevor, out of curiosity, like, if you move someone to the archive folder, like, can you still communicate with them afterwards, or is it just
Nope,
done
they're gone
after that?
forever. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, no, the archive is just like a little bin you can reference at any point in time. If say someone is not qualified and you're looking for a licensed candidate right now, just to get in, get hit the ground running,
Right.
you can archive that candidate who isn't qualified, and then maybe 6 months later, when you're finally able to start from scratch, maybe train someone, you can go back and pull out those resumes. So yeah, no, it's they're still in your account, but it's just kind of away from your out of sight, out of mind right now.
Exactly. And I honestly think it's really nice to have that archive folder, because when you move them to that folder, you can actually select to add a tag to their name, which is really nice. So that way you can say, like, underqualified or maybe overqualified, or not right for this position. There's a couple different ones that are already inside of there, but you can create your own as well. So that way when you easily go to your archive folder, you're like, oh, yep, that's why I archived that person, right? As well as being able to send them a rejection email too. So that's really nice. So that way you can just do it. Oh, that sneeze stealing. Oh, sorry. You can easily do it from there as well. So again, keeping that communication up
Yeah.
with that candidate is going to be important from your perspective. So now that we kind of talked about the beginning aspect of it, now what about like the midway, like throughout the offer stage, right? Kind of going over that communication. So Kelly, I know that you've probably been a part of a couple of interviews that we've had here. Now, what is typically that follow-up process after, completing that first interview?
Well, it all depends. Each agency is going to be different in their approach to the
Yeah.
interview stages. But I think what's really key is basically streamlining your hiring process. If it's labor intensive, if it's too lengthy, you have 3 Zoom interviews or in-office interviews plus a phone interview, then you've got more and more chances of a candidate ghosting you just because it's just a lengthy process. So trying to make your hiring process as as simple and easy as possible with a candidate, but also keeping them updated throughout the entire process. Say, hey, we are just doing this stage right now. Okay, we're going to be moving on to this stage of the hiring process soon. So I think one, again, that communication comes into it, but just making sure that your hiring process is as simple as possible for them to understand. So you already have ideal traits to help you streamline that entire process, like through to your assessment stage, through to kind of the offer stage. You also have obviously our new video interviewing tool as well, which can make it even more efficient in the process and also then saving you time on top of that. So I think again, yes, you can follow up in whichever way you want, but communicating, email, text, phone, keeping them up to date on that process is going to be key, and just making it as smooth as possible. If it's going to take like almost 2 months to go through an interview process, then candidate will have probably got fed up by that point.
But
yeah.
and not only that, if I think that if you do have a 2-month interview process, right, being very straightforward from the very
For sure.
beginning, so that way the transparency is there from the beginning. There's no
Exactly.
questioning about, oh, okay, well, hey, like I actually already left my job, or maybe it's a predicament of, oh, well, perfect, like I'll stay working here, and we'll continue on until then, right? So being transparent, sorry, in the
Transparent.
very beginning with, how that interview process will be, right? And again, this can all be done from that initial phone screening that you can set up with them,
Yeah.
kind of going over what they can expect. Hey there, so you should have gotten the assessment. If you can complete that, then we'll go ahead and review that and be able to consider you further, from which you'll hear back from us, right? And then there will be maybe 2 other interviews after that, and then we'll be able to have our
Make a
final
decision.
decision by
Yeah.
then, right? Typically about maybe 2 weeks, to go over everything. Okay, great. So now the candidate knows what to expect within that time period. They kind of know from the time of first interviewing to, let's say, the hired stage, what to expect with there, and then they can plan their life accordingly, right? Because again, it's got to be able to work both ways, or else it's just going to butt heads and then end up just parting ways, right?
I think by doing that as well, you're creating that positive candidate experience, right?
Yes.
That is the key, because like Trevor said, they could be a future customer, they could be a future employee as well. And I think what's important to remember is that people talk. So
Yeah.
you have the likes of, like, you can just Google and go to like Glassdoor, where candidates will leave reviews of employers and their interview processes. And if they know that it's that if it's labor intensive, or actually if the employer is likely to ghost them, or if they've had like a negative interview experience, then those reviews can sometimes hinder um, the candidate coming on board with them. And then so in turn, it could be an amazing candidate that you're trying to reach. But because of those reviews as well, based on that interview process, can have a big effect as well. So I think that's also important.
Exactly. And Trevor, out of curiosity, like, have you ever like, made a decision based on like a company's reviews?
Well, yeah, I would say I have.
Hmm.
I've never gone to Glassdoor, but I'll definitely go to Google and read a good amount of reviews
Right.
before if whether I'm doing business with them or
Yeah.
considering putting an application in. Obviously, it's important to not only see what people are saying, but on the rare occasion how the employer responds.
Right.
Oftentimes, you'll see an employer response on reviews, and that can make a big impact again on how you evaluate a situation. Perhaps someone left a terrible review, but the employer is like, hey, sorry, there was a misunderstanding, let's talk, and then you just that's it, it's at the end, and now I can assume that they, in some capacity, iced the cake over and the issue is resolved a little bit.
Exactly, because again, that candidate now can expect like, oh, like sweet, like, hey, they don't mind like addressing these concerns or these issues on, public social media platforms, because it's easy to be like, well, that's all a lie, right? Or get very defensive like when reading these things. So I think that definitely just kind of having an approach of, hey, let's settle this outside of here. I'm really sorry to hear that, from an empathetic standpoint, right? And then being able to offer an additional way on how to solve that, right? If you would like to contact our office, I would be more than happy to discuss with you, or the owner would be more than happy to look this over with you, whatever that might be, right? Because again, you might have someone that just leaves your office upset, unfortunately. And the last thing that we would want it to happen is that next candidate be affected by that previous one's opinion. So cleaning that up is definitely important.
I think you should treat your candidates like potential customers.
Yeah.
You respect them, you nurture them. And I mean, also, you think about them as a customer, they're a potential lead. Like, would you leave a lead hanging?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So gotta think of them like that way, I think. Respect them, nurture them, help them through the hiring process, and keep them well communicated with.
As well as any feedback as well. I think that's a really important part during the interview process. I know that when I hired here, the manager that had interviewed me, he was like, well, hey, here are some tips that I would have for any future interviews that you might take place, and here are my note, or give me your notes for mine. And I was like, oh, I would have liked to known about this and this, right? Great. So now we both have established that feeling of like, hey, like I can get your honest feedback and you can get mine, right? Especially, and this is great too, if you aren't further considering them. And again, that's just doing them the common courtesy, maybe not in a blunt way. I think the delivery aspect of that is very important.
Sure.
But again, saying, hey, I think that this could be a real big thing that you could work on. Maybe eye contact was something that you were looking for, and I just didn't have that. So if you would, want to work on that in the future, I think that it could do great for your future opportunities, right? Wording it in that way instead of saying, well, you didn't make eye contact with me, so I'm no longer considering you. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your life, right? Whoa, night and day for the different response. Right. I know if I heard that as feedback, I'd be like, thank you. I think, right? So yes, keeping that candidate engagement literally throughout the entire process is going to be important to, again, make sure that they have a positive experience, even if they aren't the right fit. Because if they aren't, that you shouldn't have any shame on being able to say, hey, this person wouldn't work out for me for these ethical reasons. For that, I am parting ways, right? Again, we have resources that you can utilize to make that much easier. But
and it's
still
okay to say no. It's okay to say no. I just think it's not okay to just ignore someone.
Right. And that's the biggest thing that we tend to see. And then honestly, you see like your candidates tab, and then you have like tons in there, and it's like, who am I talking to right now? Right? Who am I looking at? I have no idea. There's like 50 people in here. So keeping your account organized really does help as well on keeping track of like, okay, this person's in this stage. I'm still talking to this person. What's going on with Bill Jones? Am I even considering them?
Yeah.
Look at my notes. Oh, okay, no. Let's just go ahead and move them over to archive, right? And then again, from that candidate's perspective, I'm not being questioned of like, oh man, am I waiting for a call from this agency? It's been a couple of days. Like, is my phone gonna ring? Right? You're leaving them hanging. And essentially for position, again, that you could still be considering them for, or maybe not, but they just have no idea. So eliminating those questions tends to be a lot easier by keeping up that engagement. Yep. Awesome. Well, another thing that I had wanted to touch base on as well is that post-hire. Because so now we kind of talked about like throughout the hire stage, the offer stage, right? What about after they're hired? Am I talking to them then? Okay, congratulations. We would like you to start this day. Are you reaching out to them before then? Trevor, out of curiosity, when you hired into Ideal Traits, now after like you got that initial hiring stage, like after the hired offer letter, was that like communication? Like, tell me a little bit about that experience.
Oh yeah, so I was probably reached out, immediately after I was hired. Obviously, I was let known, and then probably within 3 days, I was communicated with by a secondary person. Just letting me know the rest of the process. For me, it was, I was being shipped some stuff, but obviously for
Yeah.
agents, it'll be a different thing. So just keep them, in the loop the entire time. Hold their hand, if you will, because it's
Yeah.
the age old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it to drink. We really need to lead these candidates right into our agency, because if
Exactly.
you turn around and let them, waltz off, they're gone. We have to think about how many other places that the candidates are applying, because Indeed makes it really easy. It's like a
Mhm.
dating app. You can apply to 50 jobs in 5 minutes nowadays. So it's like the
Yeah.
second they apply, from the second they are sitting in a seat at your desk, you should be hovering over them in a sense of, they need to know exactly what your thoughts are. From if when they apply, you take a look at their resume. If it looks great, you better shoot them an email. You better send them a call and say, hey, your resume looks great. Why haven't you taken my assessment yet? Get the job, go. Like, you just got to make the ball roll if you really want to see these
Mhm.
candidates, actually fall into some seats in your house.
Hmm. I completely
Yeah.
agree. And as well as touching base on the idea that getting into the office as well, again, going back to the questions thing that we've been talking about, right? If you have a candidate that does have questions about like, oh well, I don't know where the office is at. Well, I don't know who to contact, or I don't know what I need to bring on my first day, right? These are like some first day jitters that
Mhm.
like are genuine reasons why a candidate could just say, I don't know. I'm just gonna keep looking elsewhere,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, hey, I lost out on a great candidate because we didn't have that just clear communication with one another. So
Yeah,
I
you
think
want to
that
set them up for success. Like you want to set them up for
exactly.
success. So also outline kind of what they're going to be doing in those first few weeks.
Hmm.
Like that pre-onboarding to the onboarding is going to also be essential for them knowing exactly what's going on. But I think it goes from the beginning to the end. Like from the very beginning, from their job ad, that job ad should be super transparent in exactly what they're looking for in a role, whether it's like salary, the expectations of the role, what they're going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. But that should also then still be the same throughout the entire hiring process. So like the candidate has no questions whatsoever as to what they are meant to be doing in that role, what they're going to be earning, and how are
Right.
they going to get to, their goals each month. Because if they don't have those right expectations, then there's more chance of them ghosting or maybe not
Yeah,
quite working out
Right.
yeah.
after a couple of
Faster
months.
turnover rate. Exactly.
And
For
another
sure.
thing that you need to consider is, what kind of candidate we are looking for. If you're looking for a licensed pro who's been in the business for 2 years, odds are you need to approach them very differently than someone who has no idea how to sell, an insurance policy. And so you need to follow up with these people, in an appropriate manner to ensure that they do feel confident, because I've had, a plethora of agents, tell me, oh, yeah, I've hired, things looking great. And then they call me a week later and they're like, hey, they didn't even show up. What happened? Well, the candidate probably, at one point just lost their confidence that they could do this job, or, do it well, or did not feel like they were equipped well enough to go into battle, and they dipped out. So just make sure they are prepared and confident, and they know that, this is, just another job.
Yeah,
For
very
sure.
good point. We actually did get a question. It says, "Do you think job jumping (parenthesis holding several jobs in a short period of time) relate to ghosting?"
I guess yes, a little bit it does relate to ghosting, but I don't think it means that that person that's job jumping is going to ghost per se.
Right. I
If
think
that's
it
what
could.
you were trying
Yeah.
to get at, you know what I mean? Because job jumping doesn't necessarily, they might just have not found the right fit at
Hmm.
that particular either agency or previous place of work, and that's maybe why they've job jumped. There
Right.
could be other reasons for job jumping as well. I always use my husband as an example because he was at a place where he didn't like where he worked, and so then he was like, okay, well, I'm going to leave. Now he's at a fantastic place, but he was contracted at a place in between. So it looks like he's job jumped, but he hasn't. It's just that's how it's gone. However,
Right.
you just have to get on the phone with them and be like,
Yeah.
look, I actually
Oh, yeah.
like your experience. You look like you could be the perfect fit, but I do have my reservations, or I do see that you've gone from one job to the next. Could you explain a little bit more about that? And then I
Right.
think then you could get a clear idea as to whether, they have really job jumped or it just wasn't the right fit, because their expectations may not have been set correctly from the previous employer that they had. So
Hmm.
Hmm.
yes,
As well
possibly
as
it
like
could relate
looking
to
at like the
ghosting, but
line, I mean, of the careers that they're going
for
like
sure.
from, right? Are you going from like an entry level, like no experience type of position, working their way up? So then from that, they might have went to like, let's say a banking position, then to a managing position, and now they're applying to yours, right? Maybe within a short amount of time, but they might have realized within that time that, you know, again, having that upwards projection of this is
Exactly.
where I want to go. I'm kind of getting it here, but maybe this opportunity could play more
Be a better
to my
fit.
strengths. Exactly.
And people will, I think sometimes candidates will just sometimes get an interim job just to kind of keep them like happy and have a paycheck coming in, which until they get the right role that suits them,
Right.
their personality and everything. So I think that's also key as well.
And then Andrea had the statement of the candidates I've been getting are not responding to my calls and emails, and not completed the assessment. So I've been ghosted, correct? And I would say, yeah, more than likely that it does sound like it. Now, what I will say is that if they don't respond immediately, that's not their definite way of saying, hey, I want nothing to do with you, right? They could be at another job. They could be working, then, leaving a quick voicemail. Hey there, this is such and such from such and such agency. If you wouldn't mind giving me a call back about the job opportunity, I would love to further discuss with you, right? Quick conversation like that, right? Um, and then again, if they do unfortunately ghost you, what I will say is that you can easily move them to that archive folder, tag them as like, let's say not responding, right? Or did not respond. And then they'll be moved there. If they didn't complete the assessment and due later on, they'll automatically be moved back over to your assessment complete, where you can still see those notes about the
Hmm.
that interaction before, but again, just keeping that way, because again, you don't want anyone in your office that's not giving you that same courtesy as well. So
Hmm.
eliminating candidates that way, unfortunately, right? Because last thing that you want is someone that responds that way once they are in office. Hey, I've been trying to get a hold of Bobby and I cannot, he is not returning my calls. Well, he didn't during the interview process either, so we're really surprised, right? Something to just keep in mind. And again, it might not be immediate that they get back to you.
Yeah.
Just depending as to what's going on in their life. But that could be
Yeah.
a reason, but a great way on how to be able to handle that. But
Yeah,
great
for
question.
sure. And I want to say, like, you're not alone with the ghosting side
No,
of
no.
things. Like, I read a
Sure.
recent statistic that 75% of employers are ghosted throughout their entire hiring process, not just insurance industry, just in general. So it's happening, and it's happening a lot more these days just because it is so competitive, which
With
is
the
why
number
it's
of
so,
jobs, yeah.
with the number of jobs out there at the moment. So I think it's just really important that, you know, you are competitive, you're explaining the expectations of, the position, that you communicate well, that your hiring process is streamlined, like you're not ghosting the candidates yourself. I think all of these, and building up that positive candidate experience are really going to help. Obviously, it's never a full guarantee because we can't make people do what they don't want to do. If only,
Exactly.
right?
If only.
um, but yeah, I think you're not alone in that respect.
No.
Ghosting's going to happen, whatever, but I think it's just the way that you kind of proactively deal with it, to the best that you can. Then that's the way to go.
Hmm. And Derek mentioned as well that, or they might be applying to meet their unemployment requirements or have no intention of proceeding with the applications. Now, what I will say is that our unemployment rate throughout the United States is actually down to a low of 3.5%. So that number definitely has gone down from COVID, right? Which we did see that number completely spiked during that time. So in that, hey, I'll be totally transparent when I say that they might. I have no
Yeah.
idea because unfortunately, I just don't know what's going on inside of their brain when they apply. And there's not a way for us to be able to say, stop. you're applying for unemployment. Please don't, right? I wish we could, but it is a public job board, so they do have that option on their end. But again, if they don't meet your communication standards, have no, regrets about saying, then this person isn't the right one for me, right? And then you can easily send them that rejection letter. Hey there, haven't heard back from you. For that reason, we are no longer considering you for this position. Best of luck on your continuing career journey, right? Whatever that might be. But it could definitely be a reason that some candidates are doing it as well. But at least now you have more information on what you can do from your perspective, right? Because again, we can't change anything from that candidate's perspective on, why they do that, right? However, if we can just give you a tad bit more information on how we can better address that from the employer side, I think that you're better off and that much more knowledgeable than the agency down the road that didn't attend to that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons why candidates do ghost. And yes, unemployment requirement could be one of them. It could be that they found a better offer. It could be that they didn't know how to tell you no.
Right.
It could have been, the salary. It could have been, poor communication or experience, or lengthy process. Maybe they're moving. They decided to move last minute and go elsewhere. They're sat on a remote beach somewhere, and that's where they want to work.
Exactly.
Could be anything. We don't know. Like you said, Monica, we don't know what's in the minds of those agents. Sorry, not agents, candidates. So I think moving forward, the best way of dealing with it is being as proactive as possible, being communicative, streamlining that process, and things like that. Doing what you can do to make sure that you're not being ghosted. At least you know that you're putting in every effort that you can. And if you get ghosted, you get ghosted.
Well, we all probably will at some point in our life,
Exactly.
that email that my coworker never responded to, or whatever it might be, right? We will more than likely will at some point in our life, but at least now, again, from the hiring perspective, you now have more information about how you can be more proactive, like Kelly mentioned, with that journey. But perfect. Were there any other questions that anyone else had? If so, we would love to hear them. I do just want to give a quick shout out again to Kelly and Trevor for being here today, for helping us out and just better getting to understand this hiring journey that we're all a part of, right? So if you guys do have any other questions, feel free to chat them here. We actually will be going over next week creating competitive ads. So I will really be diving in and going over what we can make edits to our current ad to really attract to that candidate that we're looking to fill in our office. So if you would like that link, I can happily attach that in just a moment. Registration page. Next Wednesday. Okay. So here's that link in the chat if you guys would like that. Like I mentioned, my coworker Mara and I will be doing that event. So if you would like to get registered, you can do there. But thank you guys so much for attending and being a part of this.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, we really appreciate you getting more information and just looking to really enhance that hiring journey. So if you guys do have any questions, you can utilize the chat feature inside of your Ideal Traits account, and we will gladly get you taken care of. But I hope that you all have yourself a lovely rest of your Wednesday. And Trevor and Kelly, thank you guys so much for joining.
Thanks, Monica. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Bye.